So in a blank Excel workbook, this is the very first sheet. And I changed the name of the sheet to report. Okay, so did everybody get a chance to complete the data set? No. Okay, cool. No problem. No problem. Now, whatever text I'm typing right now is only for you to understand. You do not need to add it to your sheet. I'm just telling you what kind of comparison I'll be doing in F6. We'll be writing an if condition, and this if condition will be based on two conditions. So that's what one of the things I want to introduce to you, how to write multiple conditions in an if. Okay. Is everybody caught up now with the data? Okay. So basically what I want to do here is I want to do an if condition. I want to compare the two values. I want to compare to see if the sales exceeds the target sales, yes or no. That's basically what I'm going after. And on top of that, the number of years with the company has to be at least 2. So I will write a formula here, and then I will update that formula to a better formula in the column next to it. Okay, I believe somebody just sent a message that they're not yet caught up. Okay. So those are the two different steps. We'll write a formula, and then we will improve the formula. And how do we start our formulas? Do you guys remember? Yep, it's equals to. So So the formula will start with equals, followed by an if, and we are writing a condition. Since my condition is actually not one condition, but two conditions, because I said, if you look at my row number 16, that if sales exceeds target sales and the number of years with companies at least two, so in Excel, you write and right away, telling Excel that there will be multiple conditions to check. One condition to check would be to make sure that C6, which is my sales, exceeds D6, which is my target sales. So I'm comparing two values. And on top of that, the number of years, which is in E6, should be at least 2. At least 2 means should be either greater than or equals to 2. Now look at this condition very carefully again. I want everybody to pay attention to the condition. So we write and followed by one condition, comma, and then we write the second condition. So the first condition is the location of the sales. That's in blue color. If that exceeds the location of the target sales, that's one condition. And we are ending that condition with that the number of years with company has to be greater than or equals to 2, which in other words means at least 2. So if both of these conditions are met, I said I want to display the word yes. Otherwise, I want to display the word no. So the first value is if the condition is true, and the second value is if the condition is false. If sales does not exceed target, then the number of years is irrelevant. If the sales does exceeds target, but the number of years is not 2, then again, the condition is invalid. Because and requires both parts or both parts of the condition to be true. Just like we say it in everyday life, that I want this and that. That means I want both things. If I say if I want this or that, that means I want either of the two things. So and works exactly the same way. Does anybody have any questions about this formula so far?
No.
Okay. So now when we hit enter, oops, 1 second. C6 greater than D6. There's a problem. Oh, I think I have this extra. Oh, that's fine. Sorry. I had an extra parentheses after D6. Both conditions have to be in the same and, separated by comma. C6 greater than D6, comma, E6 greater than equals to 2. If both of these conditions are met, then yes, otherwise no. And then you can double click on the autofill symbol for it to repeat the formula in all other cells. What is the problem with this formula right now based on the outputs that have been generated? Can anybody identify the problem with the formula in terms of the outputs that are generated and what I gave you on lines 16 and 17? Anybody? What am I asking for on line number 17? On line number 17, I'm asking to avoid checking for target if the number of years is less than 2. And it didn't do that for Ali Food Services for 2022. See that? The number of years is 1 and still went and said target did not meet. Instead of checking, I want to avoid checking and display some appropriate message. Everybody follow that? What's logically going wrong here based on this condition? So how can we fix this problem? Is to add multiple levels of conditions. So I will say equals to if, and I will still have the two conditions. What is my condition number 1? I need to make sure that my C6 exceeds my D6. My C6 exceeds my D6. And what's my other condition? Is my E6 has to be greater than equals to 2. That if both of these conditions are met, yes, that is what I'm looking for. But I should not jump to no right away. Rather, I will have another if condition in place of no. If E6 is less than 2, then I must say not applicable. And if E6 is not less than 2, only then I should say, no, the target did not meet. I know it sounds like a very, very long, crazy condition, but that's how you can like do step conditions or if else if conditions. So the first condition, if it's true, it goes with yes. If the first condition is not true, then it checks for another condition that before it comes up with the final answer of no, it wants to make sure that the number of years is not less than 2. If it is less than 2, that means we cannot apply this formula. Or we cannot check for target met or not. Everybody get the formula? Any questions about the formula? How about the rest of you? And now for Ali Food Services, it should say not applicable. Everybody else, it should either say yes or no. Okay. How many of you use if conditions though, by the way? Okay. You use a single level or multiple if condition? Single. Okay, so you now get to see how you can do multiple if conditions. And then the same way you can go as many levels as you want. You're not capped by 2 levels. So for example, the second level of if condition, if it needs to check and then check for another if, then in place of no, you will have another if. So you can basically go several different levels of nesting there, just like that. So when I do if conditions for grades for schools, for example, so the first category would be for A, then we'll have category for B, then a category for C, then category D, then category for F, just like that. Okay. So does anybody know how to convert a selected data set into a table by using a keyboard shortcut? So let's say I want to select this. Okay, go ahead. I've selected this. What is the keyboard shortcut to convert this into a table? It is Control T. Control T. Okay. And then it asks you, where is the data for your table? This is the data for my table, and click OK. And now it converts the data into a table. You could also achieve the same. Usually use the shortcut to convert that into a table under the Insert tab. Okay, so that could also be done. But anyway, so it's converted into a table, and you can click the drop down for each one of the category to filter the table. We already learned about that stuff. I want to teach you guys something else today. So once you convert your data into the table, I want you to click this. Do you all have that little arrow called Customize Quick Access Toolbar? Should have it. All of you should have it. Okay. Then you go to More Commands. More Commands. And this will take you to this screen that I'm on right now. Scroll down in the list, and I want you to look for something called Form. Okay, and then when you find Form, you should add Form, just like I have it. I have added it to the right. So you will find Form from the list on the left. You click on it and you hit Add, and it'll be added to the right. And then you click OK. Once you do that, on your ribbon, quick access ribbon, you should see a form symbol added to the end. When you click on that, notice it creates a form for your entire table that you can actually navigate through. And if you want to add more data, you can actually add a new data item as well. For example, I can click New and I can add the data. Oh, okay. I'll show it again. So in the drop-down box, which is the More button next, right at the top of your quick toolbar, quick access toolbar, you click on More Commands. And then in the list, oh, hold on a second. If it is not here, you can check All Commands. If it is not listed under Popular Commands, check All Commands. Go down to the letter F. The quickest way to go down to the letter F is to click on any one of the items and press letter F on the keyboard. It will jump to all the F items. Now in the list, look for the word Form. F-O-R-M, Form. You click on it, and then you click Add to add the form, and will appear on the right-hand side. And then you click OK. Got it? So if it is not listed under Popular, then look for under All Commands. And then add it to the list. And then click OK. Did you see that, Farhad? And anybody else? Okay, cool. And then after that, you click on the Forms logo symbol, and then it'll let you scroll through your items. And then if you click New, it lets you add new item. For example, Jana Travels 2022, sales of 67,000, target sale of 75,000. And number of years is 1. Okay, as I hit enter, notice Jenna Travels get added to the table. As I hit close, I could see that it's part of the table. and it automatically calculates everything that needs to be calculated. Like it did not meet the target according to the column F, but actually it's not applicable according to column G because it only did 1 year of service. So that's another thing that you could do. If you have a large data set, then you can use the form to go through the data set one record at a time, and you can add, update, delete, whatever. Okay. I don't know. I thought since we were talking about this to show you guys this, I don't know if this is beneficial for any of you or not. Is it? I don't know. Okay. Now let's add, can you add another sheet to your workbook? This is called the department data. And in the department data, add this data. My next step would be to teach you guys how to do a search within a data set. So that if you're looking for something, you should be able to search for that. And it will automatically highlight those areas for you. So that's my next step. So let me know when everybody is done putting this together, and then I'll tell you the steps to get to the search criteria. What we will do is we need to add an extra tab. I don't know if you guys have the developer tab as one of the tabs added at the top or no? Review, view, developer, help. You guys have the developer tab? No. Okay. Okay, that's what I thought. You probably will not. Okay, so let's add the developer tab. Let's click the file menu. And in the file menu, let's click on options. Options. Okay. So you will see something like this. In this one, we need to click on customize ribbon because we want to customize the ribbon. And on the right-hand side, under the main tabs, you guys see a developer that you could check? One of the boxes that might be unchecked that you can check. So once you check it and click OK, you see the developer tab. And the developer tab will then be available to you after you do that. Got it? Okay, cool. Now in the developer tab, click the developer tab. And in the developer tab, click under controls group. You have an insert with an arrow pointing downwards. You click on the arrow pointing downwards. And under the active X controls, this is a control that looks like an AB with a little bar to its right. Okay. AB with a little bar to its right. And you click on that. And then you drag and draw that box. I'm doing it in A12. You can give this box a little bit of a height. Got it, everybody? And then when you get this box, we need to now link this box to the cell that we placed it in. So to link the box to the cell, you right-click on the box and go to properties. You right-click on the box and you click properties. One of the property will be called linked cell. In the linked cell, you will now choose A12 because that's the cell location over which I drew the box. A12. Okay. You can then hit enter after you type A12. And then you can close the properties. And then you can click on the design mode. Design mode is right now synced in. You can click on the design mode so that you are out of the design mode. So the design mode should not be synced in anymore. Okay. Now we will select the table, this table, the data set. I'm going to say. We will click the Home tab. And in the Home tab, we will go under Conditional Formatting. This is where we went last time as well, where we learn about highlight cell rules. We learn about data bars, color scales, icon sets. Now we will learn how you can write your own rules. And that's where the new rule comes in. So I selected all of these, all of the data, and I click New Rules. In the new rules, you will click on Use a Formula to determine which cells to format. And in the formula bar is where we write our formula. And search. We want to search which box? A12. A12. That's the box we want to search because that's the box in which the data will be written. So we want to search the A12 box. And I want to search the column that starts with E2, which is basically where the supervisor comments are. I want to search in that column, in that box. And in case A12 is empty, then don't do anything. So A12 should not be equals to empty cell. Let me put this formula in the chat. That'll be easier for everybody to see. Or maybe you can copy it from there, however, and search the cell from where you're grabbing the value, the column in which you're searching for that value. And we want to make sure, because that's why I use the and not just the search, because I want both conditions to be true, that it should be searched and it should not be empty. Now what I want to do is I want to format this. Means when the search is found, those cells should be different color. So after I write the formula, I will click the Format button. And I will go to Fill, and I'll just use a different fill background because right now I have a blue theme. So I'll go with a yellow just so that it pops up a little bit. Click OK, and then click OK again. Now inside the text box, if I type good, notice those good things are selected. Or if I see needs, 1 second, why is it selecting good job for needs? 1 second. Additional formatting, manage rules. A12, E2, A12 is not equals to nothing. Oh, applies to E2 through E9, A2 through E9. Okay. Yeah, okay. I think I selected the column headings as well. So make this change when you go to conditional formatting, go to manage rules, and in the applies to, you should have this range, A2 through E9. A2 through E9. Okay, everybody got this now. Click OK. And now when you type the data here, let's say, oops, why is it behaving like that? It was working just fine. Rules, A2 through E9. Oh, it's just E3 instead of E2. Okay, let me try again. Yeah. So this is the formula that should be there. I had it by mistake as E3 instead of E2. And it works fine after that. Everybody got that? How do you enter the box? You did not enter the box yet, the text box at the bottom? Oh, okay. Do you have the developer tab up there that I showed earlier, how to include a developer tab? Okay, in the developer tab, in the insert, under the ActiveX control, you will see a control that is A, B, and a dash or a line after that. That's your ActiveX control. You click on it, you drag it, and you draw it on the cell location A12. Cell location A12. Did you get that box now? Okay, then you right click on the box and you go to its properties. And in the cell locate in the property called linked cell, I put A12 because that's where I drew my box. Whichever cell you draw your box on top of, that's the cell location you put in linked cell. And then you close you press enter, and then you close this. And then you turn off the design mode by clicking on the design mode. Okay, awesome. And then and then it becomes searchable if you have done the other steps. Okay, now I want to move to our next sheet where we will learn about the VLookup. So these are the two columns here. I have employee ID and employee name columns. So if you want, you can just copy these two columns from the previous sheet and paste it here. That way you would not have to retype them. So copy the employee ID and employee name columns and paste them here in this sheet. So again, once you copy paste all the employee IDs and employee names, now give a couple of column headings, employee ID and employee name column heading. So what I want to do is I want to type an employee ID here, and I want to be able to show that employee's name. That's what the VLookup is, to be able to vertically look up a column based on the value that you pass to it. That's why it's called VLookup. It looks up in a vertical column and does a match. So wherever it matches, wherever it finds the employee ID in the column, it then grabs the name next to it and will display that. That's exactly what we're trying to do. Okay. So now in column number E2, we will write our VLookup and then we will improve our VLookup. So this is how the VLookup will be typed: equals to VLookup. That's a formula. What's a function? Vertical lookup. I'm going to look up the D2. That's what the employee ID is. Okay. Now, my data set is basically A1 through B9. In that data set, I want to read the second column. And I want an exact match. That's why my last parameter is false. So D2 is where I am picking the value to look up for an employee ID. And the employee IDs are found, and this is a data set in which I want to look up for the value and its match. And the 2 refers to the column who's from where the value I need to return. So this is a second column from where the value needs to be returned. And I want an exact match. That's why it's false. So when I hit enter, okay, it shows not applicable because I don't really have an employee ID here. But when I put an employee ID 3231, for example, and hit enter, now the formula will display Tom. So when you initially put it, it will be not applicable because there was no employee ID entered. But after you enter an employee ID, it will then display the VLookup. Everybody get to see that? Yes, no. Oh, okay. Okay. Now, there is an improvement that you can make to this process, and the improvement is this. Select this data set, whatever the data set you have. And what is the keyboard shortcut to create a table? Remember? Keyboard shortcut to create a table, Control T, very good, Control T, okay? And you hit enter, and this converts into a table. Do you guys know what is the name of this table? What is the name of the table? Okay, very good. So it's your first table, so you see table 1. For me, I created several tables, so this is table 7 for me, right? And where can you see the table name? In the design tab, in the top left corner, you see what? Table. Now, where it says table 1 or whatever, you can change the table names too. So for example, I want my table to be called EMP data. So I can type EMP data and hit enter, and now that becomes the name of my table. You can change the table name to whatever name you want. Done? Now, the benefit of doing that is, let's go back to the formula. Instead of saying A1 to B9, you can now say emp data, right? Oops. Emp data. That's the name of your table. So this helps you from having to select a long range of cells. What if your sheet has 1,000 rows? Instead of saying like, A1 colon F 1000, you can just give your table a name and then you can just call it by that name. It does exactly the same thing. Now let's talk about the improvement here. If I delete an employee ID and hit enter, then everything disappears. Oh, let me do it. Okay. Okay, so what I did, I selected the data set and I converted into a table, which was by pressing the Control T. And in the design tab, I changed the table name to emp data. Okay, that's step number 1 I did. Once I did the step number 1 of changing the table name to emp data, then I went back to my formula, and where I wrote A1 through B9, in that place, I wrote emp data. Since my data set now has a name, I will just search through that data name. Farhad, did you make the change too? Okay, cool. Now, the next thing, what we want to do is, let's say when the employee ID is not there anymore, my formula fails and says not applicable. And this is what I want to improve. So what I want to improve is by adding another thing called if error. I don't know if you guys ever use, if error before. If error means if the formula result is giving an error, that means I want to show some kind of a message to the user, and that would be enter employee ID. So that's a message I want to display to the user instead of saying not applicable, right? Enter employee ID. So if VLookup errors out, then that is the message that will be shown to the user. So now notice it says enter employee ID because employee ID was in blank. But if I enter an employee ID, then it replaces that with a proper name.
Yes. Lima na.
Guys, I think some of you are forgetting to mute. Okay, everybody got this? Okay, cool. Awesome. This is another data sheet that I want you to, this will be your next data sheet called amp degree. And so this, you'll create a new sheet called amp degree, and these are the column headings. And in the very first column, you'll just put this data there. These 5 rows with comma separators. And I'll show you another way of how you can divide this data into 3 different columns. In case you ever receive a comma delimited data. Just like 5-second stuff. We're getting very close to the pivot tables. We just need to do this one and maybe another very short example, and then we will be starting with the pivot tables. So hang in there. Please let me know when you guys are done with this data set so that I can show you the steps. Okay, you will only fill the first row. Sarah, 22 BS. Okay, you only fill the first row. Then you go underneath the Sarah and you use the keyboard shortcut. I'll write in the chat, Control E. Okay. And it automatically fills all the others. And you will repeat the same for age and the degree. You got to repeat it for each column. Got it? Okay, cool. Let's go to our last sheet here in this Excel before we move on to our pivot table example. So here in this sheet, I called it sequencing. How do you typically put numbers like 1 through 20? One way people do it is they type 1, 2, 3, and then they select it, and then they go and scroll down till 20, and that's how you get 20, right? What if you had to do 2000? What if you had to do like 900? Then this approach really isn't very practical. So let's look at a different approach. So for now, I enter only one number, 1. And if I drag that down, it will automatically copy just 1. So I want a series. So just enter 1 in the very first box, A1. Then what happens when I press Alt on the keyboard? What happens when I press Alt on the keyboard? I see all of these items, right? Then if I press H, what happens? It automatically selects only the Home tab. So the first Alt gives me letters for all the tabs. Once I pick one letter, it automatically chooses all the items in that tab. Okay. Now, so Alt H, right? Now you press F. So notice only the F items are available. And now you press I. So now it only goes FI. So that's drop down box that you see over there. And then you choose S for series. And this is what you got. So what I did was Alt H F I S. That's what I use. Alt H F I S. And now I will go under columns. And I'll say that I want to start at 1. And I want to go to, let's say, 200. And okay. And here you go. You got 200 items done. No need to scroll down, nothing. Now I have shared with all of you an Excel workbook. And that Excel workbook is what you will open. It's called the data pivot example. Let me know when you're ready, and then we will start working with this. Everybody get to download? Everybody got it downloaded, opened up? Give me a thumbs up or some kind of a confirmation so I know that you're ready to go. Why in the world do we use pivot tables? What do pivot tables do? So pivot tables is a nice interactive way to help us quickly summarize a large amount of data and be able to analyze the data set, as you can put that data set in columns and rows and divide the data set, summarize the data values, visualize the data set. So it's a quick way of doing things together. okay? Grouping things, right? So let me share my Excel sheet with you guys. Now that everybody has it, right? Okay. How can I select this entire Excel worksheet? Sorry, this entire table till the last entered data item? What will be my keyboard shortcut to do that? To only select the data in this sheet till the last data item. Control A, okay, Control A. Let's see, Control A is, yep, you can do that, right? We could also use Control Shift and multiple ways of doing it. Control Shift arrow down, Control Shift arrow down, right? But it'll only select one column. But if I select the entire row, Control Shift arrow down will then select all the way through. So multiple ways of selecting the data. Once you are done selecting the data, then to insert a pivot table, you click the Insert tab and you click on Pivot Table. And once you click on Pivot Table, it will ask you, okay, would you like to put this data in a pivot table? And you want to put this in a new sheet? And you will say, yep, I want this in a new sheet. And you will click OK. Okay. There we go. Now you see on your right-hand side some options, which are your pivot table fields. You can play around with these pivot table fields to put items in different places to generate different data sets. For example, let me grab the country from the list and drag it and drop it in the filters. So notice it appears right at the top where I can apply the filters. I can grab the product and drop it under row. And now I can see all the filters, I mean, like all the products in rows. And I can grab the amount and drop it in values. And I can now see the sum of all the apple amounts, all the banana amounts, all the beans amounts, and so on and so forth. And this is for all the countries. This is for all the countries. This is the sum of all the values. If I want to sort the values, I could do that. If I want to filter by certain countries, I could do that. I have all these different options to play around with. Let's try that. Let's go down under the sum of amounts, right? And then let's right click on it. And let's go to sort. And let's say we pick sort largest to smallest. Right now, it is just going by some order, which is not largest to smallest. So when I do that, the entire data list changes. And I could see the most amount lies with banana, then apple, then broccoli, and so on and so forth. Okay. That's for everybody, all the countries together. Now, if I go down under all and I say, okay, I want to see the data only for the United States. So I click United States in the list and I click OK. Now I only see the US data. This is the data only for the US. So for you guys, if you want to break data by location, you want to break data by supervisor, whoever is the highest level breakdown, that's what you will put in the filters. And whatever you want to see the data by, that's rows, and whatever data you want to see is by the values. So if you want to see the total number of hours for every client, then the client goes in rows and the total number of hours will be summed for that client from the data set. So similarly, I can now scroll down. I can just go to the country filter and I can check the select multiple items checkbox. And I can now say, okay, I need to see the US and the Canada data because that'll be the North American data set. And I can click OK. And here I have the North American data set. Okay. Next, let me right click on one of the sum of the amounts. And let me go to value field settings. Value field settings. This is where right now I am seeing the sum of all the values. But if I want to apply a different functionality than sum, let's say if I want to see the number of items, number of banana rows for the North America, or number of carrot rows for the North America, I can click OK. And you'll be like, oh, okay, so there are 30 rows for banana in North America, 12 for apple, and so on and so forth. If I go back to filters, I can then click on all again. So I want to see all the countries and click OK. And now I see the highest number of count is for banana. There's 71 rows for banana, 40 for apple, 27 for carrot, 27 for broccoli, 24 for orange, and so on and so forth. So I could change the operations that I want to apply. Okay, so right now, the data set I have is one-dimensional because I'm only looking at data by rows. I do not have the column breakdown. Okay, let's change a few things around on the pivot table. So where you see the word country, I want you to drag that country under rows. I want you to drag the product under columns. And I want you to drag the category under filter. So the filter has the category, product is under columns, country is under rows, and values is the count for now. I can go back to the field settings and change it back to sum. And I could do it from the pivot table fields on the right-hand side as well. So where you see values under which you see count off, if you click the arrow on that, you will see an option that says value field settings. You click that, and then you choose sum. Instead of count, you will choose sum, and you will click OK. And now it displays the sum again to you. Everybody with me so far? Okay, cool. Now, we can click anywhere in the pivot table, and on the Analyze tab, under the pivot tables, on the right-hand side, you see a pivot chart. You can click in pivot chart, and it'll chart the pivot for you, whatever you have up there, okay? So if I want to go under column styles, and let's say if I want to go 3D clustered columns, and click OK, here it puts a little chart for me. Now, one of the cool things about chart is you can actually dynamically choose items from the chart. For example, you can say, I only want to see from the category fruits and click OK. And now you only have the fruits data. See, your charts data is changed and your actual data also changed. You're only seeing the fruits produced by each country. You're not seeing any vegetables or anything like that. You can go back to the category and you can say, okay, I want to see all again. Okay, now everything is back. If you say I want to only see banana, like from the product, okay, so you can basically say I want to only see banana, and you can only see banana for each country. So this is how you can play around and select all, and there you go. So far, so good. Okay. If I want to change the charting style, I could also do that by simply going to the Design tab and clicking on Change Chart Type. And I can just change it to whatever type I want, and click OK, and I'll just change the chart type. Okay. Anyway, you guys told me that charting is not one of the things that you guys work with, but I just wanted to show you that you can actually also generate pivot charts. Okay, so let me delete the chart. And let's reorganize our pivot fields. So let me uncheck category. So if you uncheck anything from the list at the top, it disappears from the bottom area. And let's put the country back in the filter and the product back in the rows. So I have the country in the filter, product in the rows, nothing in the column. So I get this whole thing back the way it is right now. Okay, everybody got this? Okay. The next thing I want to show you is how you can group things together. For example, if I want to put apples and banana in one group and the rest of them in another group, and I want to display group level values, I can do that too. This is basically called the, subgrouping the main items. So let's select apple and banana. Okay, select apple and banana. Right click and choose group. So apple and banana automatically goes in one group. All the other items are grouped by themselves. Each individual item is a group. So what we will do is we will select all the remaining items. We will right click and we'll choose group again. So all those items will then be grouped in a separate group called group 2. So this is the group 1 total, and that's a group 2 total. Got it, everybody? Now to ungroup, you can simply select and ungroup, and everything will be ungrouped. So I selected everybody, I right click and ungroup, and everything is ungrouped. Now, let me uncheck product and let me bring date instead. Only the date. Please make sure that you have country in the filters and date in the rows. Okay. And the amount in the values. Those are the only 3 check boxes that should be checked. Got it? Okay. Now let's try to group the dates. Dates are grouped slightly differently. Let's say I pick any one of the January dates and I right click on it and I click on group. Now it gives me an options. How do you want to group a date? Do you want to group dates by months, days, hours, minutes, seconds? No, I want to say I want to group by quarters. So I will check quarters and I will click on days and months to unselect them. But I want everything to be done by quarters, right? And click OK. And notice all of the items are now, all the products are now divided by quarters. So this is the Q1 total, that's the Q2 total, the Q3 total, the Q4 total. So you could group by quarters. Okay. Let's select this and let's ungroup it. Let's uncheck the date and the country. And now let's work with slightly different fields. Let's work with multi-level items. So for example, if I drag and drop country into the rows, so notice everything is now broken down by country, right? Now, if in the same rows, if I drop category after country, what happens? Now, I can see that Australia, what's fruit stuff, what's vegetable, and for each country, I can see that breakdown. That's called the multi-level breakdown. So within each country, I can see its subdivisions. Now I want you to click the category in the rows section at the bottom and move it up. Okay, switch them around. So now everything is by category, and within a category, the countries. So the sequence in which you put the items in the rows can define, how you want these items to be broken down. Okay. Now let me uncheck the category, and you have the country and the amounts, right? I want you to grab the amount again and drop it in the value. So you'll have 2 amounts. You'll have an amount and you'll have another amount. You have 2 columns, exactly the same, but we will change the second one. The second one that says sum of amount, click on any one of the cells. Right click on the cell and then click on value field settings. I know we have come here before when we were doing sum and count, but now I will choose a slightly different category here, which is the tab next to it, which is show value as. And in that tab, instead of no calculation, I want you to click the drop-down box and choose percentage of grand total, and then click OK. And now you can see what percentage of the grand total is with each of these countries. So out of all the data I have, 25% of the value is the US. Almost 17% is United Kingdom, 15% is Germany, and so on and so forth. So that's how you could be using that option as well. Okay. Okay. Let me remove the percentage one. And let's set our things slightly differently here. What I want to do is I want to put country in the filters. And then let me also put product in the filter after country. And then in the rows, I want to put the order ID. So the order ID is in rows. The country and product are in filters. So now I can see every item and its amount. That's okay. The reason I did this is so that you can see how you can filter the orders by country. I only want to see Germany data. And in the Germany, I'm only interested in beans. But this is how you can filter the data to see only the Germany, and within the Germany, the beans. Okay. Now I want you to set up your data like this. Uncheck the country, the product ID, the order, okay? Throw the amount in the values as well as in the rows. You have the same item in the sum as well as in the rows. So that's why initially there will be the same values because we have not done much with it yet. So what I want you to do next is right click in the second column, which is sum of amounts, and go to value field settings. In the value field settings, I want you to go to count and click OK. And right now you can see that all the items are appearing only once, and there are total 213 items. Okay, that's fine. Our next step, you right click on any one of the values and you click on group. Now that's a different way of grouping because these are all numbers, right? So when you now click on group, it now asks you what would be your grouping. And you'll be like, you know what, my grouping will be starting at 1. My largest value is 10,000, and I want to have a group of thousands. So my first group will be from 1 to 1,000. My next group will be from 1,001 till 2,000, and so on and so forth. So I'm starting at 1. I'm ending at 10,000. And each group will be 1,000 numbers. And click OK. And here you go. You can see the grouping like that. That's basically how you can do your frequency distributions. And you can chart that as well, you know. Let me go to in analyze pivot table, and here you go. You basically charted your distribution. Just to visualize, and that's about it. You know? Okay. Now, let me ungroup this. And let's do a slightly different thing. Let me remove the amount from the rows. So you right click on amount or click on the arrow on the amount and choose remove field. And these are the fields I want. I want my country to be in filters. I want my product to be in rows. And let me undo my filters to all. Okay, so now see all the data. And I want to change my value settings from count to sum. So I came here and I went to value settings and I chose sum and clicked OK. Okay. Now I want to apply slicers. Slicers allow me to slice my data sets however I want to do. So let me click on country and insert slicer. Sorry, country slicer. So I clicked on insert slicer in the analyze. I want to slice by country, and let me click OK here. So here I have a country slicer. What does that do? Simply picking an item from the list will allow me to just view the value for that country. And if I click on that red X in the top right corner, then it just clears all the filters and gives me my original data set. Now comes the question, can I insert multiple slicers? Yes, you can insert multiple slicers as well. You can go back to your pivot table and you can go back to analyze and you can insert slicer on a different field. So I'm choosing product this time and click OK. Now I have two slicers. And I can actually format them differently too. For example, I clicked under slicer styles, yellow color for my product one and green color for my country. So if I say I want to look at Germany and I want to only look at beans, and I can press and hold the control key and click on carrots and orange. So I could see those three items only from Germany. And then I can click on these red axis to clear all the filters. Can I have multiple pivot tables on the same sheet or no? What do you guys think? Can we have multiple pivot tables on the same sheet? Yes, we can. True. Okay. So let's select this pivot table, this whole data set. Let's copy this. And somewhere to the right, let me paste it and adjust the column width. Okay, so I have the two versions of the same data set, right? So if I choose Canada and I choose broccoli, notice they both can show me the same stuff, but there's no point of showing the same stuff in both places. So what I will do is I will change the second one to display me the count. So let me right click and let me go to the value settings, count, okay. Okay, so now I can say France and broccoli and orange, and here we go, banana. Okay, so here, this one shows me the sum and that one shows me the count. And let me clear the filters. Here we go. We're back to the way things were before. Now let me go to the actual data behind the scene. And let's say, pick Apple. Row number 10, it says France, the amount is 2,417. Let me update that amount to, let's say, 15,417. So I'm adding 13,000 to an existing value, right? And I'm pressing enter here. So when I come back to the sheet 1 after I made that change, sheet 1 still shows the old value for Apple, which is 19,120, 191,257. It doesn't reflect the addition of 13,000. So to make this happen, you would have to right-click and hit refresh. And when you do that, you can now see, you can see that it is now 204,000. So you can refresh the data by right-clicking on the pivot table and doing that. Okay. So far, so good. Okay. Okay. Now let's go back to our data and let's scroll down to the very bottom. And let me add another row, 214, peach. Oh, P-A-C-H, peach. Fruit, 4,500. 12/16, 2016. And let's say Mexico, 215. Kiwi fruit, 56,000. 12/30, 2016. And let's give that to New Zealand. Okay, so I've added a couple of extra rows. So I've actually changed my data set, not just updating it, but I added more data to my existing data set. Yeah. You can make as many changes as you want and just refresh once. Absolutely. You don't have to refresh for every change. So now I've added a couple of rows, 2 extra rows here. We'll give a few more seconds, everybody, to make those changes. And maybe I will increase the font size in case if it is too small. So row 215 and 216. Okay, now let's come back to sheet 1 where I have my pivot table. I right click on my data set and hit refresh. Notice nothing changes here because kiwi and peach are not one of the existing categories. Neither they were part of my actual selection. So now comes the question, do I have to recreate the pivot table? No, You do not need to recreate the pivot table. You just need to tell the pivot table that I have more rows for you to consider. And how can you do that? Well, this is how you can do it. You need to go to Analyze. And in the Analyze tab, click anywhere in the pivot table, click the Analyze tab. And you see under Data, Change Data Source. Everybody see the Change Data Source? Click on the top button there. And it now shows you that this is the selection criteria I have so far. And notice the selection criteria ends at row 214. So make that 4 a 6, the last one, from 214 to 216, and click OK. Oh, because I have multiple data set. I need to, sorry, I forgot. I need to delete that. You cannot do it with dependencies. So that's why you have to get rid of dependencies. I forgot about that part. Change data source, make it 216, and click OK. There you go. So we have kiwi and peach added to the list. If there is a dependency, then it won't let you do it. Okay. Next, I want to remove the country from filters, and I only have my products and my sum. Okay. I want to add calculated fields. That's the next step I want to do, calculated fields. So click anywhere in your pivot table, and in the Analyze tab on the right-hand side, you have a group called Calculations. And you click the drop-down box, and you see an option that reads Calculated Field. Click in that. Okay. Click the calculated field. So I want to calculate tax amount. So I want to calculate tax amount, and my formula is like this. If amount exceeds 100,000, if amount exceeds 100,000, 3% of the amount will be the tax. Otherwise, it'll be 0. You know, if the amount doesn't exceed 100,000, it's okay. So that's my formula. So let me copy that formula and put in the chat. And after you put the formula in the formula, you click Add button so that the formula and the name field gets added to the fields. So you will see in the pivot table fields list, you will have one additional field to choose from. Okay, so you click on Add, and then that field gets added. You can click on Insert Field after that to insert the field. If you want to quickly insert field when you type a formula for later on, we don't need to do that right now. We can just simply click OK. Well, probably. And now we have one additional column, sum of tax. And this is basically the percentage. So anywhere the sum amount doesn't exceed 100,000, it is 0. If it exceeds 100,000, then it's 3% off whatever the amount. And that's what we calculate. So you can actually have calculated fields. That's basically all I wanted to show you, that how you can calculate fields. Okay. Now let me uncheck this calculated field and let me rearrange such that the category will be in filters. And you will have product in column and country in rows, just like this. Okay, so I put category in filters and product in columns and rows in a country in rows. Okay. Is it okay you guys can stay maybe like 4 or 5 minutes extra? If need be. Okay, cool. Okay, now let me go down to cell location A16. And let's say if I want to see beans, France. So how many France beans or how many beans from France? Okay. So I can choose to type the cell location. What is the cell location for France beans? What is the cell location for France beans? Okay, so we'll type equals to G8 and we'll hit enter. No problem. It gives you the correct value that the beans France is 680. Perfectly fine. But here comes the problem. I go under category. Right now it says all, right? I'll say, okay, choose vegetables and click OK. So when I choose vegetables, that means I'm eliminating all the fruits. As a result, beans France is still referring to G8 and there is nothing in G8. The beans France says what? 0. Okay, we need to fix the problem. How can we fix the problem? Is by using a built-in function. Let's clear the filter again and choose all instead of vegetables. You will see that you get your 680 back, right? Okay, now go back in that cell and delete the G8. Leave the equals to only. And once the equals to is there, I want you to click in the cell G8. Don't type G8 directly, just click in the cell G8. The moment you do that, you will see this new formula that pops up, get pivot data. What happens is with this formula, even if the cell location change, but as long as beans is on the screen, it will track it. So it's basically saying that I want to look for this data item. As long as it is visible, I want to be able to refer to this data item. So it has some arguments or values. The first one is the data field amount is what we are looking at, right? The 680 is the amount, what we're looking at. Then the reference of the cell, A4, which is the sum of the amount reference field. And then we have the actual product is beans. That's what we are tracking. And the country, France. So now let's hit enter. So now 680 is still there, just like before. But this time when you go to category, and instead of all, you choose vegetables and click OK. Notice 680 is tracked. You do not lose 680. So that's a get pivot data, or dynamically getting the pivot data values through this get pivot data function. So, but if you choose fruits and click OK, then that value will be an error because the value has to be on the screen for it to pick the value. If the value is not on the screen, then it will fail definitely. Okay. Got it, everybody? Okay. Okay, that was the last thing I wanted to cover with you guys today. And I hope it was useful. For you to play around and work around with pivot tables, how to move things in columns and rows and calculate things and how to group things, how to visualize those things, and so on and so forth, and how to add calculated fields. So that was our last session, guys.
Hello.
Let me stop the recording here.